Hello, welcome to this lesson in Mastering Statistics. Here we're going to touch on the topic called the central limit theorem. We're actually going to talk about the central limit theorem in great detail in this section, and in the following several sections we will use the central limit theorem to study problems. So let me set some expectations. The central limit theorem gives a lot of students problems, but I'm telling you, nothing about it is difficult. The only reason a lot of students have problems with it is because you have to visualize what you're doing to set up and to use the central limit theorem. You have to have a good fuzzy picture in your head of what it's actually talking about. Otherwise, you can't apply it at all. And that's why I spent so much time in the last section talking about all this. I could have easily just put this on the board and said, boom, 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 learn it, people. But that's not very helpful. We need to understand that we're sampling, these are the sample size, this is what we can do with it. And then I'm dovetailing into the central limit theorem here. There's a continuation here. It's why I've left everything on the board so that we can then learn about it. So as we go through the central limit theorem, remember two things, okay? Two things, only two. Number one, remember that the central limit theorem is not hard to understand, but you have to let me get through the whole spiel before you understand it, and probably a few problems too before we really understand it. Number two, the central limit theorem is very, very, very useful, all right? You don't see that in the beginning, but when we start working the problems, you'll understand how useful it is to actually have this thing laid out before you. So I'm not going to prove it, we're just going to talk about it. So for the central limit theorem, I'll just go ahead and write this down. It's called the central limit theorem. All right, and when we're studying this, guys, we have to make some assumptions. So I'm going to say given, this is what you're actually given when we're talking about. We're given a population, which is what we're trying to study usually, and it has a mean of mu. Remember the symbol mu? That's the mean of the population, and standard deviation. That's what I usually write down when I say standard deviation. Lowercase sigma. That's what the symbol is. We've studied these things before in previous parts of Mastering Statistics, but just reminding you, when we talk about the mean of a population, we're using the symbol mu, like that's a lowercase mu. And when we're talking about the standard deviation, we're talking about lowercase sigma. That's what a lowercase sigma looks like. If you have no idea what a mean or a standard deviation is at all, then you need to stop and go back to Mastering Statistics, previous lessons. We study that stuff, make it crystal clear. You need to know what the mean is and what the standard deviation is. But anyway, these properties, these two properties here, are related to the population. So for instance, if my population is all North American males, let's say all North American males, that's the large people, we can't study them all directly. But we know that if I'm studying their height, then if I study all North American males, they will all have an average height or a mean height. We'll call that mu. Maybe the mean height is like 5 feet 8 inches or something. And there will be a standard deviation, which is how spread about that data is about the mean. So if the mean is 5 feet 8 inches, the standard deviation might be plus or minus 6 inches. And we talked about what all of that means, but basically it's telling you how spread apart all of the data is of North American males about the mean. So that's given to you. We always have populations we're having under consideration. They always have a mean and a standard deviation, but we almost never know what these numbers are. For real, we can't really know them. We can take surveys and estimate them, but we don't really know them because the only way to know them is to actually talk to everybody in the country. All right. Now, underneath this, we're going to talk about sampling. So, we're going to choose all samples